To Kill a Mockingbird, many notable events occur, but perhaps one of the most noticeable is Jem's loss of innocence. Throughout the story, Jem is known as a leader and protective guardian who helps to guide Scout throughout school, obstacles, and life as a whole. Readers also see Jem Finch develop as a character. First, he becomes furious and is easily tempered. Then, he is suddenly mature and grown, and finally, Jem loses his innocence, which was once very dear to him. Jem's changes in character are first shown when he cuts off Mrs. Dubos's flowers after she cursed at Atticus for defending Tom Robinson. Readers can infer that Jem is a very ill-tempered person to damage somebody else's property without any hesitation. Jem is also proven as very defensive and vengeful through his actions. He then becomes more mature and developed when he goes through puberty, a process that changes his actions, words, and thoughts. This also affects Scout in her doings. Finally, Jem loses his innocence. An instance that contributed to his loss of innocence was when he destroyed Mrs. Dubos's camellia bushes after she insulted Atticus. As a punishment, Mrs. Dubose made Jem and Scout read to her. Mrs. Dubose ended up dying of a morphine addiction a few months after Scout and Jem began reading to her. Both siblings learned how fast somebody can be taken away from the world without a single warning. Another instance where Jem lost some of his innocence was while attending the Tom Robinson trial. He did not know much about racism and prejudice in Maycomb, so he expected an innocent person, Tom Robinson, to win over lying people, Bob and Mayella Ewell. When Jem learns that Tom did not win the trial, he is puzzled and dumbfounded. He ends up witnessing a black man get convicted of rape and therefore be sentenced to the death penalty. These actions significantly contribute to his loss of innocence, as shown when Jem is crying in chapter 22. The novel states, "His face was streaked with angry tears as we made our way through the cheerful crowd. It ain't right, Atticus," Jem said. Harper Lee utilizes the fact that Jem and Scout are foil characters for each other, which provides a comparison and contrast between the two siblings. Together, they bring out the best in each other, which involves Jem's leadership and Scout's innocence. Also, because the novel is told through Scout's perspective, the relationship between Jem and Scout becomes more visible than if it was said through another character's view, such as Atticus's or Tom Robinson's. My symbol is an old, raggedy, beat-up teddy bear that represents Jem's innocence, which is right there. When Jem lost his cherished childhood innocence, he was almost figuratively beat up, and he was suddenly faced with the tragic reality of racism and prejudice in Maycomb, which deeply affected him. This was primarily because of the Tom Robinson trial. Bill Dunn's roman also involves all of these aspects, so that is why I chose a sponge to represent the overall theme of the novel that associates with Jem, which is the sponge right here. Just like a sponge, he soaks up all of the information about everything he has seen in Maycomb, between the trial and Bob Ewell chasing them. These actions ultimately contribute to his loss of innocence that affects the course of the story and Scout's actions. Jem's loss of innocence plays a significant role within the story of To Kill a Mockingbird. He develops within his teenage years as anger and adulthood take part in his life and change Scout and Jem's perspective on specific ideas that have to do with issues encompassing prejudice and racism. Jem ends up losing his innocence he once had, primarily because of the Tom Robinson trial, after believing an innocent man would not be guilty of a crime he didn't commit. This belief ends up affecting the whole story, and many other characters are affected by the trial and Jem's actions. Thank you.
You're welcome.